Joining us now, lots to talk about. Congressman, Republican from the 2nd District, Scott Rigell. Congressman, great to have you.
Good to be back, John, and thank you as always. And I just want to start out with this. I am so mindful that next Tuesday, I really think is a defining moment for our country. And at the epicenter of this is, of course, just as you described, whether Harry Reid continues as the Senate Majority Leader. I think this would be a terrible thing for our country for that to happen. So let me put it in an optimistic term, which is the nature of how I'm serving, is that I believe that we'll take the Senate. We really need to. It's got to happen. It would be good for our country, and we're fighting to do what we can to see that happens.
You got to get Reid out of there. And to your credit, Congressman, you said that on my show about 36 months ago. You said the number one problem in the United States was Harry Reid. You're one of the first people to say that. Once again, Scott Rigell on the cutting edge of history, 713 here on the John Fredericks Show. Hey, let's get to Wallops Island, this rocket that blew up. What's
unfortunate, John, that and Terry's rocket. We were all looking at that literally with great expectation and hope. It's a sober reminder, John, of the inherent technological challenges that are just part of space flight. Mm-hmm. I grew up with a true NASA pioneer. I mean, a real pioneer. My father, Ike, was with the Redstone Project and then with the Apollo mission all the way through. So many times my literal home would be shaking, as those big Apollo rocket engines would be going off. And so I've been around the space program all my life, and I served on the committee that oversaw that in my previous term. But it's a difficult thing. But I think the key, really, John, is not only in space flight, but just in life generally. How do you handle something, and how do you respond to something that goes terribly, terribly wrong? And it's in our DNA as Americans to figure out what went wrong, to learn from it, to maintain those lessons learned and going forward. And they will. They'll press forward. They'll figure out what went wrong, and we'll get back on track here, I think, pretty soon.
Well, they normally do. I mean, that's one thing. When NASA gets involved in something, normally they figure it out and they get it right, and I'm sure that things will work out. Here's the good news. There was no one hurt.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's an interesting path that we've gone down. It was actually a private company, Orbital. It was their spacecraft and their rocket. And I'm convinced that they're going to learn from this, and again, we'll get back on track. So I look forward to that. But it was a tough day for NASA, a tough day for all of our friends at the Wallops Space Flight Facility, and, just a tough day.
Without a doubt. Congressman Rigell, I want to get to the Ebola crisis. You and a number of other Republicans calling for travel restrictions from West African nations. Obama not doing that, and so we've got a little bit of a conflict there.
Yeah.
Now we've got Jersey Governor Chris Christie, New York Governor Mario Cuomo instituting a 21-day quarantine. Look, better safe than sorry, right?
No question about it, John. There's a tension, and it's always present between our civil liberties and the basic human right, which is to life itself. And so, in this tension, between our ability to travel freely, where we want to go, but yet also, above all else, is our ability to just be alive. Given this, that the mortality rate, the numbers that I've gotten are 70%. I've heard some at 50, but anyway, it's high, between 50 and 70. And given that we have no cure, right, and there is no cure on the near-term horizon, and our only defense is to keep it from spreading by isolating it, to me, it leads to the irrefutable conclusion, in my view, that we have to have a vigorous, tight enforcement policy on the quarantine. And I think what's unfortunate here is the administration. It's another example of, frankly, managerial incompetence, John. Just the lack of an ability to grasp a big challenge and then to provide a comprehensive, clear solution set to that can be followed by the nation. This Ebola has been around a long time, about 4 decades, and so there's been plenty of time to prepare for this, anticipate it, and think through it. And what we've seen unfold across the country is not good.
Well, why does it make any sense to take the chance of letting people in? I mean, I really can't. A lot of us can't fathom what the Obama administration's thinking is. If you simply restrict travel in for the time being until we figure this out, where's the downside?
Well, I think sometimes government officials think their whole job is to go to the podium and just calm the fears of the American people. Look, there are some times when the best thing to do and is just speak boldly to it, and not out of fear mongering or something like that. And I understand the need to not over sensationalize it, but look, the facts are very striking, very sobering, and the facts lead us to the conclusion. Certainly, not only me, but many. It's not a partisan issue. Many of my Democratic friends have the same view, that we need to aggressively and front load our effort to isolate it. And I think the administration's approach to this, the casualness with which they're dealing with some of the voluntary quarantines, evidence is clear that they are not being followed. And also the idea of having free travel from these countries just doesn't make any sense. There's some rumblings about whether non-Americans coming to this country. I don't want to contribute to the disinformation that's out there, but I trust and hope that's not true. Mm-hmm. And if it is, if that thing gets any kind of traction at all, then we'll be at the tip of the spear with so many others, both parties, objecting to that. But I hope that's not going to happen.
I want to get to international affairs for a second. Let's stay there. The ISIS situation, Congressman, right now, no end in sight. This concept that we were going to get coalition troops to fight this battle on the ground, that we were going to draw troops from Turkey, from Yemen, from Kuwait. It just is not going to happen. There'll be no troops there. We're dropping bombs all over the place. As you said, if one bomb got dropped on us in Nevada in the desert, we go bananas. Right. We're dropping bombs indiscriminately. Look, there's not going to be any coalition troops, and ISIS is now adjusting to the bombardments. They're making gains. How do we justify sending our troops in when the countries that are under siege don't even want to fight to defend themselves? Why should I send my son there or my child there to defend somebody that runs away?
John, the central point here to me is this, is that the Iraqi army has, my best assessment is between a 9-1 and a 10-1 advantage, and just sheer numerical numbers of Iraqi troops to the ISIS fighters. And that's where we need to start. I mean, they've got a 10-1 advantages. They've got between 20 and 30,000 ISIS fighters. We've got around 240 or 50,000 Iraqi fighters, and so much of the equipment that was there was in good order. It's there. They've got to have the will themselves to fight, and when needed, to be willing to put their life on the line in defense of their own country. So I think the pressure must be greatest on the Iraqi people themselves. And one thing I think is so critical here is that there is I think a profound difference in ISIS than what unfolded in Libya shortly after I got into office. I objected to that. I tried to defund it. But ISIS, I think, is a completely different animal. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're trying to establish a caliphate. Mm-hmm. They have a perverse worldview, mm-hmm. and they'll advance it if they can. And I don't know. I think you and I may disagree on this, but we just need to work through it.
All right, so if we send U.S. troops in, because this is inevitable, because there might be 250,000 Iraqi fighters, Congressman, but if they don't want to fight, you can't do much with it, and I don't think they've proved their mettle. Every time there's a conflict, they take off their
That's not in
pants
dispute.
and put their bloomers up on a stick and run away. So, I mean, it sounds great. I just don't see
Now, John, let me be clear. I don't want either you or the listeners to think, oh, well, Scott's calling for, the introduction of ground troops. No, what I'm calling for, and I've been very clear about, is that the president does not have authority to escalate our involvement and our engagement in combat, which is war. And we are, there is a war with radical Islam. I believe that. And he must, to fulfill his duty under the Constitution and the War Powers Resolution, come to Congress and work through it.
Right.
I've been very clear on this matter. And I think that there is legitimacy found in that, if indeed at the end of that debate, and I think he should call us into joint session if he wants to engage U.S. troops, but that's not the direction that he's headed. But that process is beneficial, I think, to the nation. I think it's beneficial to the world. And should we decide that we need to escalate the war there, and I don't know the outcome of that vote. I really don't. But there's too many unknowns between now and then. But if, in fact, we came to that affirmative vote, then I think the nation would be better served that way than the way we're headed now, which is essentially he treats it, and that means the U.S. military, as if it's the King's Army. It is not the King's Army.
On that, we totally agree. I think the president needs to go to Congress, get authorization. And, Congressman, when he does that, he's got to lay out his idea, what his vision is, show what victory is. We don't even know what that is now, and then let the chips fall where they may. Congressman, Homer's flying around. The government sends out a procurement estimate, a bid for green cards and work permits. Now, everybody thinking, well, after the midterms, President Obama is just going to declare some kind of blanket amnesty. If that happens, how do you stop it?
Well, let's first say that I think that, as I used to say in our business, that the best indicator of future performance is past performance. The president has demonstrated a willingness to circumvent the law. That's a serious charge, John, and it's some of these points are debatable, and you find at times even Republicans defending what the president's done. So this idea that he would do an end run here after the election, that you have to conclude that is a possibility. I think, and I've already reviewed. In fact, I had a conference call with my staff this week in Washington to review, to prepare for, to anticipate this, and to work through what we can do, what definitive steps we can do. Lawsuit, that doesn't seem to be very practical. Mm-hmm. I think the funding, this is the real lever that we have. It's not easy. It's a very difficult thing to do because other things are funded that you do want to fund, and not funding a bill brings with it serious ramifications. But I'm sobered by it, and I think it's a real possibility. But we're ready for it, John, and I hope he doesn't, essentially go back outside the law. There are some things he could do within the law,
right?
But things, if he goes outside the law, we're going to deal with it.
So, Congressman, what you're saying is if Harry Reid is no longer in control of the majority of the Senate, and President Obama goes and does things, in your opinion, that is outside his constitutional right and outside the law, then an option to stop it could be simply defunding him or defunding whatever he's attempting.
That's correct, and I'm so glad that you linked the two, John. That right. Is the Republican majority in the Senate,
right? Without that, you can't defund anything.
That's right. See, I've told folks this. I said, listen, this may be a controversial statement, but if I had the choice between replacing the president or replacing Senator Reid, I'd replace Senator Reid.
Absolutely. I mean, Senator Reid is the issue right now in the United States. And if we get up on November 5th and Senator Reid is still the majority leader, you have no idea, with no accountability whatsoever and a rubber stamp in the upper chamber, what this president is capable of. As you said, past performance indicates the future, right?
Yeah, it's not good, and that's why so much is at stake, and I hope the returns in our race are known sooner rather than later. And our race is important, and I would encourage everyone to come out and vote. But that said, just this collective effort to have a new majority in the Senate, it will shape our country, I think, for 30 or 40 years. And, John, I am loath to lean into this area called hyperbole, but I believe that. I really believe that we've got to get control of the Senate. I think it would be good for the president, frankly, because then he'd have somebody to negotiate with. Right now, we've got this dysfunctional Congress. We can't get any significant legislation out of Congress proper, that is both houses. We get it out of the House, but it is languages in the Senate. So he has nothing to veto, nothing to sign into law except for these stopgap measures. This is not good. It's not good for him. He could negotiate with Congress, and I think, as imperfect as it is, we could find a way to find some common ground. I believe that.
I'm almost out of time, Congressman.
Yeah.
If people still want to get involved, they've got a week. Get involved in your campaign, hand out signs, knock on doors. Where do they go?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. ScottRigell.com, ScottRigell. Well, those signs are up all over the district. We've got some wonderful volunteers that have worked so hard. I'm so proud of the team. But regardless of how someone would vote, they ought to go out and vote. But I'd sure appreciate their considering my candidacy and also giving me the privilege to go back and fight for the 2nd District.
Hey, look, we got
Thank you, John.
6 days. We got 6 days. If you got any time available, go out and help Scott Rigell. We got to get this guy back in there.
Thank
I want
you,
to
John.
thank the congressman he's fighting the good fight and he stands for something. You got to get Rigell back in there.